Welcome to the Retirement Resource Show, the place to come and live a retirement that is meaningful, fulfilling, and fun. We believe this phase of your life is the best time of your life. It's up to you. And we've got the show to get you there. Here's your host, Bo Henderson.
Hello, welcome to the Retirement Resource. This is a show for you about approaching retirement or living in retirement and making sure it's a retirement that is meaningful, with intention, and fun. And I can't think of a better lineup today than our guest that's all about this same message. When I heard about this, Amy, I said, Mike has a rich life message. So I'm excited about today's.
Really going to be a great show with him. Get us off, some of that financial topic and really hit the heart of things today. And I think our viewers are going to really enjoy that. Well,
let's jump into, so we have a little bit, I want to spend as much time as possible with our guest, but we wanted to talk a little bit. There was the Employee Benefit Research Institute, or EBRI, Retirement Confidence Survey that was updated and just came out. I always like to see the pulse and see the feedback of where people are, kind of where the sentiment is, so to speak. And I found a couple fascinating pieces of data that I thought we could just briefly talk about, and then we'll bring in Mike. But the first one is the survey showed that 4 in 10 workers and 2 in 10 retirees, that's 20%, say they do not know where to go for retirement advice.
That's mind-boggling, isn't it?
That's shocking. That's shocking. 80%. Or 2 in 10 don't know where to go. So, but what in the day in and day out of working with retirees, what I can say is that most people do get to retirement, or by the time I'm talking to them about it, they don't really have a retirement strategy. They've been so busy with a career, raising a family, that one day they look up and it's real and it's right in front of them, and it feels like we're trying to play catch up. So a lot of our message here is, let's raise awareness. Let's go ahead and be proactive, and let's start planning for something that's inevitable in the future. So not a surprising statistic, though. How about this one? Workers envision a gradual transition to retirement and retirement funding that includes work for pay or part-time work. And that's something that I'm seeing more and more as a norm, is that retirement that just stops, you drop off a cliff from your working life and you go into retirement, because a combination of things, people realizing they're living longer, people realizing that maybe they didn't save as much as they planned to, people realizing they lose things other than financial resources when they retire. It's not just money. There's relationships, there's sense of identity and purpose. So I expect to continue to see that trend moving forward, that it's like phases of retirement, even if you even want to call it that.
Well, and what I've noticed as well is that the conversation about it is getting more comfortable. I think it wasn't maybe as comfortably discussed before. And now I'm noticing a lot more of that conversation, that this is normal. This is what a lot are looking to do and continue working in some capacity.
And you're right. And it's fascinating. You said something key there, normalizing. Sometimes there's something powerful about when we know that it's not just us that are experiencing this, not just us that are concerned, not just us that aren't happy, and it feels a little more normal. So I think just awareness and raising awareness about what's really happening with people. One more, and we'll move on from this topic or this study. Most retirees report their overall lifestyle and expenses are as expected. However, up from last year's survey, 1 in 3, so another third, find overall expenses to be higher than expected. A couple things, right? We had a big spike in inflation last year that's continued into this year. So things have overall gone up. Just ask anybody that drives a car, right? My truck, I don't even know what it costs to fill it up, because the pump it just cuts off at $100. So I know it's at least $100, right? So things are more expensive. And what does that mean, or what implications is, retirement is typically, yes, we have a retirement goal and a retirement lifestyle, but we have to have the financial inflow and outflow, the income and expenses, so that we can have that bigger conversation. And speaking of that bigger conversation, I just want to share some of those fascinating facts, so that if anybody's experiencing some of these things we talked about, that's a fascinating study. If you want to look it up, EBRI, Employee Benefit Research Institute study, just to see what your peers and people pre-retirement, planning for retirement, and in retirement are thinking, feeling, and going through. So just some good information there. But I want to talk and transition to our guest today, Amy. So let's bring him
Yes.
in.
I'm so excited that we have Mike Drak. The fact that he was willing to be with us today, such a powerful conversation is about to take place. So let me just give you all a little bit on him so you know exactly what's going to take place right now. Mike Drak is an author, public speaker, and recognized authority on the non-financial aspects of retirement. Big, 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 big. After having spent 38 years in the financial service industries, Mike retired and personally faced what's called retirement shock. It's big, it's real. I've seen it. During this time, Mike found himself on a journey of self-discovery and authored 2 best-selling books on retirement, Victory Lap Retirement and Retirement Heaven or Hell. Which will you choose? Mike is now a senior contributor at Booming Encore and dedicates his time to help other retirees design a fulfilling, meaningful retirement lifestyle for themselves. What a perfect intro and guest for this show in particular. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
Well, Mike, as you know, when I heard the book, Retirement Heaven or Hell, which one will you choose? I knew we had to have a conversation. It's just too good not to talk about. But before we get into that, I would love to, I know this is a passion for you. We've had some conversations. I've seen you out there putting content out. Really, I can tell this is a mission for you. And if it's like most missions, you have a story behind this. So what is your story that brings you to what you're doing now with all this?
Well, my story is I worked in the financial services industry all my life. During the course of that time, I helped thousands of people save up for their own retirements. And in addition to that, my wife is an investment advisor. So she runs a book of business and she helps people plan for retirement, things like that. But it's all on the financial side. And despite all that expertise that we had between us, I still ended up in retirement hell because I failed terribly at it because I never focused on the non-financial issues. I always thought it was about how much money you had. And the more money you had, the better your retirement outcome would be. And I thought when you retire, all your problems would be solved. They would disappear. And guess what? They don't.
Wait, Mike, you mean it's not like the magazines? It's a beautiful white-haired couple on their yacht?
No, and you're not on that beach and you're not on that golf course.
Right. Okay. Just checking.
So I had all these misconceptions and, I suffered for a while and it really bothered me and I couldn't understand why. And I thought back to my father. He spent about a year in retirement shock until he recovered from it. And I had a good friend die from it. And I think that's really what impacted me. He ended up drinking himself to death because he just couldn't cope with the change and the lack of meaning and purpose once he left his work behind. So it really struck home. It resonated with me. I didn't want people to go through that and suffer the same things I did. And so that's my mission now, is to go out and help people and speak about it and say, hey, these are the things you need to be aware of and you need to be prepared for, or you're going to end up wasting a couple of years of prime retirement time figuring this stuff out, right?
No, and I love that you named it, that you kind of named it, and so that people could understand the concept and the stages. That idea of retirement shock, I've seen it multiple times, and I think when you address it proactively ahead of time, it's much better than when it's a surprise, right?
That's the key. Yeah.
Right. Because what I've seen is, we're talking non-financial. I'll go down this rabbit hole with you all day long. I love, a lot of our interactions have been through the Retirement Coaches Association. So that's been a lot of the non-financial stuff. But, I've seen people, they're in retirement. Finally, but I'm supposed to be happy, right? I don't have to go to work in the morning, but I'm not happy. I'm kind of sad. I'm kind of depressed. I don't know what. Now I feel guilty because I'm supposed to be happy.
That's right. And they think there's something wrong with them, right?
Right. And that's why I love this work that you're talking about. It's normalizing that, hey, other people like this are going through similar things, and it's not just some bizarre thing you're going through.
No, a lot of people go through it, Bo. And there was just a new study released by Ken Dykewall over at Age Wave.
Right.
And he said, on average, people suffer for 1 or 2 years going through a phase called disorientation until they figure things out. And that's retirement shock, retirement hell, whatever you want to call it. And I'll never forget when it happened to me, and I was at home by myself. My wife was still working. I'm sitting on the couch, and I was just miserable, and I didn't know what to do. All my friends were still working, and I was getting frustrated because my wife and my friends all assumed I should be the happiest guy in town because I didn't have to work anymore. And it was because I couldn't work anymore that I was unhappy until I figured out that kind of relationship. So yeah, it was an eye opener for me, but it's something we don't talk a lot about, and people need to be aware of it.
Well, let's talk about this because you've named it, right? Because you named it, you can explain it, and I think this can help a lot of people when they hear that. You broke it down into 3 stages, and I think we were talking about somewhat of the shock in the beginning, but let's talk about those 3 stages, Mike.
Okay, the shock doesn't hit right away. So
Okay.
stage 1 is everyone's happy because, like you said, you don't have to get up in the morning, you don't have to do the
Right.
commute, you don't have to get stressed out after hard days at work, you don't have
Sleep
to
in,
work for a tough boss anymore. And so you're really happy, and you're kind of, you're on cloud 9. You don't know what you're going to do, and you're trying to figure things out, but things are good, right? And then all of a sudden there's a separation. Some people can stay in that happy place, but people like myself, people that need to continue to grow and be challenged and to experience new things, we start to question things, and we start to suffer a little bit because things are getting boring for us, right? So we need to have new challenges brought into our life, new experiences, in order to be happy. It's a big driver of happiness for us. So we need to find these new things. And until we do, we're going to struggle. The biggest discovery I made was that my work provided a lot of those things to me. And I never thought about that before, right? Because I didn't like office politics, and some of the bosses I didn't like. And I didn't like the pressure from sales quotas and things like that. But there were many things about my job that I did like. I liked, working with other people. I liked working on teams. I liked socializing. I liked helping my customers, right? That was very important to me. I love problem solving. So either, financial problems I love solving, or just, problems for small business owners, trying to run their business, or maybe they had other problems they wanted to talk about. I really enjoyed those parts of my job, but I never thought about that. But when you leave your job behind, Bo, you lose all that. All those sources of things that made me happy were gone. They were taken away from me. Until I could find alternative sources to replace that, I was going to be miserable. I wasn't going to be happy. And that's where the lifestyle design process kind of comes into it.
Yeah. So we went through a honeymoon phase,
right?
And then it's not such a honeymoon. And then we realize, okay, we're in retirement hell. So we're in phase 2.
That's right. And we're lost. We don't know what to do. And it's the worst thing, Bo, because you sit there and you're grumpy. You don't want to do anything. Even the things that were fun before, maybe you like to go, golfing or fishing or whatever. You don't feel like doing any of it anymore. You just kind of want to sit there. You're depressed. You want to moan. No one wants to talk to you because you're always complaining, or you're talking about your old job. Remember when kind of stories, and that gets boring after a period of time. And no one can really help you because no one understands it themselves, right?
So we get to, so the retirement hell, I think this is the stage where people can get stuck. And that's where you see people get old real fast.
That's right. And they don't recover.
Exactly. Or even worse, right?
That's hard.
See people leave work and then within a few years, they're gone.
Oh, yeah. They age quickly. And that's the danger. And what I'm really concerned with, and I've had this happen many times, I'm sure you have too, at the end of our seminars, people will come up and they'll say, you know what? My father, he was a doctor. He had a great life. He has all kinds of money. He really enjoyed himself. He retired and he died within 2 years.
Yeah.
And why did that happen? Well, because they couldn't replace being a doctor with something else. They couldn't find new purpose for themselves that was acceptable to them, that could get them excited again, get them engaged again, that would be meaningful for them. And that's the struggle. And it happens too frequently.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what you read and see, before we start bringing up the conversations that you're having, that's why I'm so excited that you're having them and you're out pushing this work out there. It's the things you gain. It's the stuff. We talked about it. It's the time freedom. It's the not having to go in that stuff. But I love the exercise of, okay, let's do a mind shift. And we just talked about all those things everybody thinks about when you first bring up retirement. But what are the things that you lose when you retire?
That's right.
I mean, relationships, like you said, identity, sense of purpose, and sometimes if we can pre-think about those, I think it could go a long way into it being that shock, that surprise, that big, that helpless, vulnerable feeling.
That's right.
So okay, so we're there. People say, you know what? I've seen somebody in retirement hell. I know what Mike's talking about, and I don't want to be there, or I'm there myself. How in the world do we get out? Is there a way to get out of retirement hell?
Well, really, that's where we kind of go back. And as a matter of fact, I'm working on a new book that really walks people through this process. And the first thing we do is we try to discover what type of retiree you are based on your fundamental needs that everyone has. And we try to find out the needs that are important to them that need to be satisfied. Some people have a need for achievement and accomplishment. They need to be challenged. At the end of the day, they need to be able to say, hey, I did this today, and I'm very proud of it. And you need to find sources of that in retirement, or those kind of people are going to suffer if they can't. Some other people have a strong need to help others and give back to the community. They love doing that, and they need to find good ways of doing that. And sometimes they struggle with doing it, and they might end up in the basement of some charity, licking stamps on an envelope for different things they're doing, but they're not doing meaningful work that gives them that sense of accomplishment, and they can be proud of what they're doing. One of the worst things you can do in retirement is become visible and feel that you're not relevant anymore to maybe your family and whoever else. These are all tough things that need to be replaced, or you're going to suffer for it. And it's probably going to end up in a state of depression. Hopefully it's not that bad. So there's some state that you can recover from.
And, you're ahead of the curve with this work. And I know that this is a drum you've heard me pound. I hope that in 5 years' time that this is truly integrated work into what is called financial planning or retirement planning now, because I think if you don't have that component, it's not complete, right? You're vulnerable.
That's right.
We may be utilizing our money should only be a tool to move us towards the life we want to live. It's not the end all answer. It's not the I'm successful if I have this or that. Is can we utilize our assets, the things we've accumulated over our working life, as a tool? That's right. As a tool to live that life that we talk about, right? And that is really, and I'm just sharing that right now because I know that's a passion of yours, that this kind of work needs to be as normal as if you tell me you have a personal trainer at the gym. Oh, I have a retirement coach. Exactly. or I have an advisor coach that I'm working with. So I appreciate that. I want to a couple things. So I like that phases and those phases. And as Mike was explaining them, have you experienced them? Honeymoon, the hell, then getting to heaven. Or can we proactively do some work? So maybe we can, I'm the worst about having to learn by feeling the pain lessons, right? But can we learn from this work and from what other people have done, and maybe accelerate that learning curve, right? And maybe it's not as quick, even if we do have to go to retirement hell. I'm not saying that it wouldn't happen, but could we accelerate that time there too, because we're aware of it and recognize it and can be proactive?
Well, that's the thing, to understand what's coming your way and to be prepared for it. Because really what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for another 30 years of living. And you want to make sure you do this thing right. So when you say, would you make a small investment in a coach? Well, I think it's one of the biggest return on investments you can make. Because if you can sit down with a coach and design a lifestyle that will work for you, a quality lifestyle that will make you happy and keep you healthy for the next 30 years, well, you're a winner. And really what you're seeing now, and we're doing this, is we're taking the talk away from retirement and we're replacing it with the term longevity. We want to learn how to live longer, better, and have a high quality of life, and to figure out with individual solutions how we can do that. And that's the fun of it. And that's the fun. We have problem solving for individuals on a case by case basis. How can we create how can we create a great lifestyle, and how can we finance it then so we can make it a reality?
And I love the way, just some of the language that you've been using here, Mike, is that it's not, somebody can't show up and, Mike, you're not going to say, or a coach is not going to say, this is what it should be. Every person has different puzzle pieces.
That's right.
Different variables. And it should be customized to you, because the thing your neighbor told you is the way you should retire may not apply to you at all. All right.
Exactly.
And I think that is key. Now, I want to keep moving. There's we could talk about this all day, but you did have, I really liked, I saw in the book, there was some principles to retirement principles. Can we kind of go through those pretty quick, just so that maybe, again, we can be aware of them, and talk a little bit about what you meant when you really kind of put these principles together? What was the deal there?
Okay. I originally called them retirement principles, and now I'm referring to it as longevity principles.
Okay.
And there are principles for living your longest, best life. And what we learned from a famous nun study, I don't know if you heard about the famous nun study, but basically the takeaway from the nun study was happy nuns live longer than unhappy nuns. So happy people, happy retirees will live longer than unhappy retirees, or retirees that have a poor attitude. So, that was the major takeaway, to say, okay, how can we make ourselves really happy in retirement? And that's where we came up with the principles. The first principle is relationships. We learned during the pandemic how important it was to have these relationships, because when we went into self-isolation, we couldn't see friends and family. We knew how miserable that made us feel. And it's been proven that the quality of your relationships can reduce mortality risk up to 40%. So it's so important to make sure you have these strong relationships in place, and that you nurture them. And you made the point, you got to be careful, because when you retire, you could lose a lot of your work friends and leave them behind, and they have to be replaced, or, it's going to impact your longevity. The second principle was health. Health is a big one. We're focused on health like crazy. We're coaching people to go back and get into the gym and get into the swimming pool, or go out and walk and get their health back if they let it go. Many of us let it drag a little bit. We take it for granted when we're working so hard. We're working full time. We're taking care of our families. And this is our chance to win it back. A lot of people talk about a difference between lifespan and health span. In the US, there's a gap about 13 years, which is a shame. It's just so wide, and we can really shorten that gap, where basically they'd be equivalent. So you could live out your last day healthy enough to do the things that you love to do, and maybe one night you go to sleep and wake up the next day. But to me, that's the best way of going out. I spent a lot of time in a nursing home, right?
No.
And then another principle is financial independence, getting your freedom back, not worrying about if you have enough money in retirement, because you have enough money to survive and get by. So you have enough, and that takes a lot of pressure off you, and because of that, you're happier. Another principle is spirituality. We know that people that practice spirituality live up to 9 years longer than other people. So that's important. And we know that you don't have to go to a church or a synagogue to practice spirituality. You can find it out in nature. When you go out in the woods or the mountains and whatnot, where you feel closer, to the universe and God, and it clears your mind and stress is reduced and things like that. So that's very important. We also know that retirees with a positive attitude live up to 7.5 years longer than people with a negative attitude. So we don't want people to look at retirement as an end game, as a period of decline. We don't want people to look at each 65 as it's game over, because it's a lot of game left. There's a lot of time left on the clock. Like I said, maybe upwards of 30 years. So we want people to look at this period as almost like a second life, a restart, a reboot. And you can do all those fun things that you couldn't do when you were busy working full time. So
And it should be, I believe it should be, Mike, I think it should be the best years of your life, right?
oh, for
I think
sure.
it shouldn't be the wind down. It shouldn't be anything less than I bring all this experience and I've kind of paid my dues. And now it's my time.
That's right. And I don't want to rest on the sidelines and watch the world go by. I want to go out there and be engaged and experience things and challenge myself and meet a lot of new people and do all these fun things, right? That's exciting. And those are the people that live the longest. There was one lady, I'll never forget, I laughed because she went for her first skydive at age 100. And I was so happy to talk about it. And then, sure enough, within a couple of months, a lady, 102 years old in Australia, broke her record. So these people are doing these unbelievable things, but they're showing us what's possible in retirement. And it's exciting. So there's no limit to what people can do. And I'm very excited about it. But the biggest mistake I made when I failed at retirement was not having something to retire to, and that's finding purpose, right? So I had purpose when I was working. I had to work hard. I had to make money so I could take care of my family and pay down the mortgage and pay for the school and all that stuff. But when they left home and the mortgage was paid off, then your purpose kind of disappears on you, and you have to find a new replacement for it. And that's the search that a lot of people struggle with.
Are there any steps when you talk about that? Because finding your purpose, right? It sounds like something that we should do, but any actionable steps if somebody came to you and said, that sounds great, Mike, but how?
I use this simple diagram. It's in the book. It's called an Ikigai diagram. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Bo, but it's matching your skill sets and your knowledge and your passion to an activity that you want to do. I use it to help people find part-time work, paid work, but you can use it for volunteer work too. But it's really neat. It worked for me too, because that's what I figured out what I wanted to do. And, it takes some time. People have to go deep within themselves. I can't give them the answer for what they should do. And they start to figure out, you know what? I have knowledge in these areas. I'm experienced in these areas. I have a lot of fun doing this type of work. I enjoy it. I want to do more about it. I want to become the best I can at it. And those are the people that find new outlets for their creativity and their energy, and they're highly successful. I hear their stories and I just love it. Like, there a lot of people are starting these small businesses. And they could be service businesses, or they could be selling a product or things like that. And they're having an awful lot of fun with it. But we got to tell people that, yeah, here's some possibilities. Look what these people are doing. Think about it. What could you do that could help? I have a guy. It's just I love telling the story. Is he worked up in the cottage area. He would put in septic tanks and dig water wells, right? Well, every winter he goes to Africa and he donates his time. He's digging water wells in Africa as part of his mission work. And he's having a wonderful time. And he said it was life-changing, the experience, and giving back and helping people and seeing how they struggle. It changed his life. But he couldn't connect the dots until he went through the diagram. Right? So now I'm very excited about that.
And Mike, I think as I was reading back through the book and we've had our conversation, I think this book, and I know you have another one in the works, but I think I'm going to make this pre-reading for people I'm working with that are not yet retired. I think it's perfect, sets up the retirement coaching conversations perfectly, starts giving some actionable exercises. So for those watching, and this is the demographic we're talking about, this shows the retirement resource, right? How can they plug in with you? Is the best thing to do to check to get the book, or is there some other way you'd like us? Because once you're on the show, I don't tell people this. It's like the Hotel California. Once you're on the show, you're connected with us as a Brain Trust member for life. So, Mike, welcome aboard.
Well, I
But now,
appreciate
how would you like people to connect with you further?
Well, what they can do is they can go and have a look at the book. It's available on Amazon.
Okay.
I would have them start with Retirement Heaven or Hell if they're close to retiring. So, that will increase their awareness. My role, like yours, is to educate people.
Okay.
I would also urge they visit boomingencore.com. I write a lot of articles on retirement there, along with other authors. And again, it's like a retirement education center.
Mm-hmm.
And in September, I'm going to launch my new surprise project. It's going to be very exciting. I'll send you a note on it, Bo.
Okay.
And it's really going to help a lot of people. I have a mission. I want to help a million people transition to a successful retirement. And that's going to help me get to that goal. And I'm very excited about it. And it's just educating people. It's just teaching them. And and all that work at Booming Encore is for free. And then if they have questions or whatnot, my contact information is there, and they could just flip me an email. I'll be happy to answer any questions they might have, because I don't want people to suffer like I did. I want them to have a great life, a long life. And I know it's possible, but they have to learn, right? And they have to do that prep work, like you said, before they actually retire.
Right.
Well, I love to hear the big missions, because I know with big missions becomes big impact. And again, thanks for the work you're doing. Check out Mike Drak, Drak. Go to Amazon Retirement. I'd recommend starting with Retirement Heaven or Hell. Which would you choose?
The links are in the comments.
And we'll have the links in the show notes. So,
Yes.
So again, thanks so much, Mike. Now we're going to transition to another thing. I have a feeling you might have a story for me in our next segment, Amy, if you want to roll with that.
You got it.
Okay, so the idea with this segment, Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot here. The idea with this segment, best or worst, what we do is we get people engaged that watch the show of sharing what is the best, what are the good things, best trips, best experiences, best memories, things you'd recommend, and or what is the worst, what are the horror stories that you've experienced or seen or heard of. And it can either be a lesson or a blessing, or something to do or something not to do. And after looking through your content, I had a feeling you might have either a best or a worst or both. So I wanted to give you an opportunity. What do you think?
Well, it's a combination of the two. I think it's important that we walk the talk. We coach people. We try to help them and whatnot. I talk a lot about longevity and happiness and getting healthy. I think it's so important. During the course of writing 3 books and going through a pandemic, I let my health slide. I put on 53 pounds, terrible out of shape. As a matter of fact, I had a shoulder problem develop because I was spending too much time in front of the computer, and I had to go to physiotherapy to get it fixed, which really kind of bothered me. So what I decided to do, I said, okay, you talk about setting goals and whatnot. Let's set a goal. Let's get this thing on the right side of the ledger. Let's get healthy again. Let's maintain that for as long as I can. So I decided to do this thing called an Ironman.
Oh, wow.
And it's in Cozumel, Mexico. I think you've been there.
Mm-hmm.
I read it on LinkedIn and whatnot, and it's in November. So I'm training for 6 months. I have to lose 53 pounds. And train for this Ironman. I booked the flights, I bought the ticket, and I hired a coach, an Ironman coach, and it's going to be hard. It's already, I'm struggling with it, but I know if I can get there, even if I don't make the finish line, I know I'm going to be in great shape because of all the training, and I'm going to be on a good trajectory again. And I'm hoping that people can see the journey I'm taking and the challenges I'm facing, and how hopefully I could push through and do the things I talk about. So yeah, it's going to be exciting, and that's something maybe we should talk about at the end of November.
You'll have to check back in, get your update, because you did
Yes.
have a surprise, and I was going to say let's get back on the show later in the year and talk about that. And I want to see how the Ironman goes.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
love that, right? So you realized I'm out of shape, and to the point earlier with your principles, there's another academic survey that I used to use that stated that the number one determinant of a successful retirement or a fulfilling, satisfying retirement was your physical health,
That's right.
right? And you're like, uh-oh, and you did something about it, which to me is leadership, right? People can follow and be motivated by that. So I love that. So we had a story that didn't start, because if it kept going down that path, eventually, right, the health thing will catch up with you.
Oh, yeah. And, it catches up fast too, because once you're on that downhill trajectory, it really accelerates, especially when you're retired, because, a lot of people just sit around and don't do a lot of active things. And it affects you both mentally and physically.
Absolutely.
So that's why I said, no, it's a trap. And I'm talking this stuff. Well, I gotta live to talk.
Right.
So I gotta do it. And it's going to pull me out of it and set me up for hopefully a nice long retirement. So
take a lot of pictures. I can't wait to talk to you about after the fact.
Yes.
So as a financial planner, my wife's very excited because she bought more life insurance on me as a hedge.
I was going to say, if you need people to come cheer you on, just let me know. I can
just to bring the body back.
All right. So physical health, remember, the number one determinant of retirement satisfaction. Mike, love the story. A good example. Amy, let's go to Ask Bo.
You got it.
Now is the time for Ask Bo, where he answers your questions. Remember to send your questions to askbo.com.
Well, Mike, this is where we put Bo in the hot seat, and you can ask him any question you'd like for us to wrap this up.
All right, Bo, I just wrote an article. I haven't published it yet. I wanted to get your feelings on reverse mortgages. Are you pro or con?
Yeah, there's a long answer to this. I've worked with a couple of guys. One I would plug you in with is a guy named Don Graves. Does a lot of education, kind of like what we do with a lot of these retirement concepts around reverse mortgage. So the shorter answer is those products have come a long way. And like a lot of planning, I see scenarios to where there's people that are equity rich and they're struggling income wise in retirement, to where reverse mortgage could make sense. Right? It's not for everybody and it has to meet certain parameters. But I have, as I researched them more as it came up for clients, they're not as scary, and they're much more favorable to the consumer than some of the horror stories that you hear that might kind of give them a bad rap. And it's not anything different than a mortgage, right? It doesn't mean you have to lose the house. Your heirs can sell it. They're never going to let it go upside down, right?
That's right.
They're always going to structure it, and your heirs can sell it just like they would anyway, and they'd have to pay off the balance. But for a lot of people, especially now, you think about the real estate run up for this decade retiring. A lot of people have a lot of asset or net worth in a house, but their income poor. So I think a conversation, and it's just like anything we talk about, the key is education, 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 because I see things like that, like insurance products, like other things. Where you hear the bad stories is when somebody that wasn't educated either sold them or they didn't educate the consumer that bought them, and they weren't set up properly or structured properly. So I see home equity as the reverse mortgage as a viable tool for income planning and retirement.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you there. And I think it's good, especially today with managing sequence of returns risk too, with the way the market's performing, right?
Right.
So there's another benefit attached to it. But I agree with you. It's just a lack of education on advisors' parts too, because they don't know the product either in enough detail. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest I think that's where the biggest issues happen in the bad stories, is people that aren't competently trained or understanding things, selling them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of throwing my industry under the bus, but I think those are where the big issues happen. But that's part of the message, and I know you'll buy into this too. If you're getting advice from somebody that's not teaching you and educating you so that you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, you might just be sold something. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, hey, Mike, had a great show. We went a little bit over, but I didn't want to miss any of some of those principles and get the steps of the retirement hell to back to heaven. And I'm serious. I do want you to come back in the fall and give us an update.
Yeah.
And I know you always have a good stream of content. So you're welcome back on the show anytime, my friend.
Well, thank you very much, Phil. I
Thank you,
really
Mike.
appreciate it. And I love the work that you're doing too. It's, you're doing great work. You're helping a lot of people. And Amy, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Great to have you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. And for those of you watching, let me know what questions you have. Let me know what guests you'd like to see, topics of the reverse mortgage that came out today. Do you want me to have somebody on? Do you want us to have a conversation? This is your show. We're here just to facilitate. We'll see you next week, same time, same place on the Retirement Resource.